So if you're trying to make sense of AI for your business, you're in the right place. All right, everyone, welcome back to the latest episode of Unlocking AI Value. Today, we're talking about defining AI ROI, which I thought was going to be a tongue twister, but I think I pulled it off there okay. So this is a good episode, good conversation, hot topic out there in the world. Of course, trying to make sure that we're actually getting something for our AI dollars. And so, Jay, when we think about defining AI ROI, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the hype, in my opinion, out there and all the worry and concern. I want to just go back a little bit to history and these paradigm shifts that are technology enabled. If those can remember, I'm going to list a couple, and this is historical information data. This is facts that, for example, when we went from typewriters and office and papers and everything, and we went to PCs and computers, and we had all of a sudden we had word processing tools and all that cool stuff. It took years before they got ROI out of that. Right. And executives are going like, where's all my money going? How come I'm not getting ROI? I'll just go back to paperwork. Okay. No, they didn't, right? And they eventually got it, right? Same thing when we moved to the cloud and everything, and we started moving to the hyperscalers, right? It was the same thing, right? And it took a little while before people saw, some return on their investment, right? And the same thing happened with doing the web and putting everything online, right? So I can just go on and on, right? Well, I think we're in the same situation in AI right now. It's a fairly new technology, especially the new AI we're doing. Janae, remember this whole hot potato started in November 2022.
Hmm.
Okay. Those historical things I was talking about, it took 10, 12, 15 years before companies got the return on investment they expected, most companies, right? This was going a little faster, I think. I think we're going to see more or faster return on investment from this paradigm shift. But let's talk about return on investment is. There's a lot of confusion, I think, out there on that. To me, it's really simple. It's like balancing your checkbook, your checking account, right? I'm gonna make certain amount of money. I'm gonna spend certain amount of money. I want to make sure that I have more money, I'm making more money than I'm spending. Okay. And if I'm running a business, I want to make sure that my customers and my revenue and everything pay for my operational cost and I have profit left over. To me, this it's that simple. So if I'm going to invest in something, you should do a cost benefit analysis, especially in the AI world as tokens and hyperscaler costs are going up. And you should have some governance around that, right? So that you make sure that that equation not balances, but produces more profit than cost, right? So to me,
Very
that's
positive, right?
simple. Exactly. But now what we're finding out, which I think is critical, is that remember, I only said it's a few years old, right? So based on the research, I'm going to list some things, and I did, prove to myself that this is correct. There's not a hallucination on my part or Gen AI's or research papers I read. But for example, many banks, Discovery Bank, for example, personalized banking, they use AI service assistants for their customers and everything. They calculated, they instrumented that they got a 500% ROI on that investment in a short period of few months. DWS Bank did the same thing across hundreds of use cases, and they calculated that over the last 2 years, they've almost had $1 billion of economic value generated from AI. This is economic value by new customers and new markets. Okay, JP Morgan Chase, same thing. They've developed an LLM suite, model suite, and now they've have AI business value because they've automated many of their simple transactions and everything. So they've reduced their operational costs. Morgan Stanley's did the same thing. So there's a lot of examples out there in the financial industry. That's many of them. But there's also a really concrete example for us here living in Indianapolis too, because Eli Lilly is a really good example of how they've moved to what we call native AI, and they've integrated a lot of their organization and every part of their organization is using AI. So they've actually accelerated drug discovery
Mm.
using internal models and data and everything, and now they've found novel molecules and so forth much faster than they did before. And there's certain value metrics they do there, like candidate molecules evaluated, prediction accuracy, laboratory experiments avoided. They've actually reduced what we call their wet laboratories, where they actually do the physical stuff, and increase their silicon laboratories, where they do the models and everything. They've invested in the Lilly Pod, the supercomputer with NVIDIA, the largest GPU supercomputer in any company, where they're running all of these models, so they don't have to pay for tokens.
Which is nice.
They're running it on their own infrastructure and computers, and that then
Big
allows
up,
them
big
to,
upfront investment, but at least they're, now that
yeah,
they control it. And it's
right.
interesting, like on the drug development side, I mean, that's stuff that takes decades, right? A lot of times. And if you can
Yeah,
accelerate that, that's huge, right?
it's
You're
huge.
reducing that time and getting to market potentially faster, like a lot faster, and that,
Mhm.
accelerates that revenue curve.
Right, and it's the same thing now. They're going to try to work with FDA and other government because clinical trials is another
Mhm.
long one. And they shortened their clinical trials significantly. Lilly did, and they were the leaders in that. And so that whole clinical development, they're using a lot of AI there to help for trial design, to help get people onto the trials faster and keep them on the trials. That's a big thing. A lot of people leave the trials too early and everything. And so there's a lot of protocols there. Manufacturing is huge. They said some really cool stuff in manufacturing. So not only can speed up the manufacturing and everything, but they also have digital twins and everything that they're doing there with AI. And they actually have robots
Mhm.
that are humanoid robots that are doing cool stuff. So, that's an example. And they have metrics where they're identified, what we had at the beginning, and here's the baseline now that we've implemented this. Here's the increase in value that we orchestrated and that we can see, right? Which hits your bottom line.
Yeah, yeah. That's the key, right? For ROI, you want a positive impact to the bottom line for sure. And so really thinking about, how do we actually measure that? Like Jay said, it's relatively simple as you think about it, but some of the things are not as obvious. Like if you're a financial company, a bank, it's a little bit more straightforward because you're working with dollars, and that's usually the currency that you're thinking about for that ROI. But other things, when you're thinking about like drug development cycle times or manufacturing cycle times and things like that, it's a little bit different, but you can make the calculation usually, right?
Mhm.
And back to dollars. So just the whole point, right? Are we getting the return on our investment of dollars is usually what I'm thinking about.
Mhm.
Um, and so, could be return on investment of time savings and that kind of stuff, but you
Mhm.
usually want to, connect the dot one more step to dollars, right? To make sure that we're getting a positive bottom line impact. So,
And I think measuring, the value you're creating, like we said earlier on the prior podcast, what's the value we're creating for the humans, for society, right? That can be measured too,
yeah.
if you think about it, right? And there's a lot of debate, rightfully so, with all the data centers that's going out, right? So think of the value that could be created if we came up with some solution that would help the earth and our population in the cities, right? So that the data centers are innocuous, if you will, right? Or there's some other technology. We're in the business of inventing and reinventing ourselves, right? And especially us, we're in the technology world. So my question is, maybe space isn't the answer or underwater, but is there any way we can build these engines, these computers, so that they're more vertical than horizontal? So I take up less space and less water and less electricity.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone will solve that.
Yeah, I mean it is a lot. It's interesting. Like we should probably do a whole episode on maybe data centers and that kind of conversation. But I've seen people talking about like just the current state of this of technology right now. It's going to advance, right? It'll get better. It'll get faster, cheaper, more efficient, and all those kind of things that you see. I think it was just last week here in Indiana. There was like a morning and breakfast workshop or something like that with the governor talking about potential investment into nuclear as an alternative as well. So there's a lot of different potential solutions there that people are trying to make some advancements on. And just like everything, it's only going to get better, faster, more effective, more efficient as time goes by because people will continue to advance the technology. of, space, solar,
Mhm.
all the things we're talking about, it'll only get better and faster, I think. So trying
Mhm.
to model everything after the current state right now probably doesn't make sense because it'll change, 3, 6 months from now, things will start to improve. So we'll see where all that goes. But from an ROI standpoint, it's you can sort of only work with your current situation, but
Mhm.
you can also forecast that things will get better and cheaper probably in the future as the technology advances, chips get better, and more efficient in terms of power usage and things like that. So we'll see where all that goes.
Yeah.
Keeping an eye on it is a good idea.
Yes, keep an eye on it because I'm sure the socioeconomic calculations and instrumentation is going to change, right?
Mhm,
And so when you think about ROI, like you said, banks and finance companies, this is their bread and butter, this is their mindset, so they can think that way, calculate instrument, right?
mhm,
But then there's other, like you mentioned, other ROIs that are not financially bound.
mhm,
Most companies care about the finance,
mhm.
right?
Yeah.
But there's probably other value metrics and return on investments they should care about, right?
Mhm,
So if I like one of the largest endowments in the world is Lilly Endowment, and they provide money to good causes, right? And there's ROI to that,
mhm. Yeah.
right? So how do you measure that investment if I give, $1 million to cancer research?
Mhm.
All
Yeah.
right. So that those things I think are important to keep in mind as well.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some broader impacts to your point of it's not just the straight dollars, expenses and income kind of stuff from a company, but if you're making investments like that into other organizations that then have their own ROI, then you can, connect the dots to all those things and really think about what benefit we're getting from all those, that chain of events that happens, right? So
Yeah.
it's a good
And
point. So
yeah, what we call that back in the day, and we still call it that, the value, what do we call that? The product value stream,
Green, there you go.
right? So it's a value stream, right? That's
Yeah.
what we're looking at, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm going to create a value stream, I need to keep tabs on all those elements, the financial elements and the ROI, the cost, all that cool stuff. Or the value goes up or down
Yeah.
for that value stream.
Yeah. That's a good point. Like to really understand that end to end, like how does it all work? And it sometimes doesn't stop at the edge of your company because it goes out into the world. There's value beyond that, but
Mhm.
you can also you probably also want to understand where that goes from there. So to your point of
Yeah,
like, making investments or donations or things like that, could extend even further into what that ROI is. So good way
right.
to think about it. So that was our episode today on defining AI ROI. And so next episode is going to be from curiosity to capability. Ooh,
Mm.
curious what that means. All right, see y'all next time.
Hi, thanks for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And drop a comment with topics or questions you'd like us to cover. Thank you. See you later.